everything you do is great as a bookkeeper and accountant. But if you're willing to step into more of that trusted advisor role, and that's really the first step, it's the willingness. Are you willing to be something different and do something different to step into that role? Because if you are looking for that, there are people looking for you.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is the creator of Sales Mastery, which is an online e-course for accountants and bookkeepers, and she is a profit-first professional. Debra Angilletta, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michael. So great to be here with you today.
It's great to have you, and we actually met on the Successful Bookkeeper Facebook community group Power Hour, which we do every Thursday at noon. And we talked a lot about sales. And actually it was really, really well received by the viewers of that. And so I'm excited to have this conversation and help our listeners be better at sales.
Yeah, what a great group that is over there, and excited to dive into some great stuff today with your listeners.
Yes. Well, let's tell our listener a little bit about you, your career journey leading up to this point, and then let's get into making them get on that road to sales mastery.
Yeah, thanks for that. You know, it's really funny. I went to school like many of you, went to college. My major was in finance and economics. And it's really funny because once I got out into the working world, nowhere did it say that I needed a sales course in order to be successful in my career. And funny enough, I started to get these jobs. I started out in banking, then moved to financial planning, which if you think about it, financial planning skill set's great, but guess what? You got to sell your services. And then eventually I moved on as a trader on Wall Street. I was a sales trader there. And once again, sales creeped up again. I never had a formal sales course. And that was one of the things that, I just looked at my peers, my colleagues, I watched what they did and just emulated what they did. And I got by pretty well, but that's really the extent of my sales training. And the other thing is I wasn't born a salesperson either. But it's so funny because a pivotal moment did happen, Michael, later on in my life that really had it all come crashing down, where I had to learn sales. And it's when I decided to leave my business and start my own business. Funny enough, I could sell somebody else's services, but I couldn't sell my own. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
I bet it does. I bet it does.
Yeah.
We'll get back to the interview in just a few moments, but right now, here's a quick message from our sponsor. Let me ask you a question. Are you frustrated with how long it takes to get stuff in your bookkeeping business, or with how chaotic or confusing things seem to be? Well then, let me tell you about a much better way of getting work done by using an amazing tool that will help you overcome the frustrating log jams in your bookkeeping business. Sweet Process is a simple but powerful solution that lets you create clear, step-by-step instructions for every task in your bookkeeping business, from new client onboarding to executing client work to responding to client requests. So everything gets done more easily and reliably. Plus, you'll have a central place where everyone who works with you, your employees, contractors, and even virtual assistants, can access your procedures anytime from any device. The best way to understand how Sweet Process streamlines your work is to start using it. The company offers a 14-day free trial, but as a loyal listener of this podcast, you can try it for 28 days free of charge. You don't even have to enter your credit card to get started. Just go to sweetprocess.com/successful bookkeeper to begin your free 28-day trial today. Thank you for taking the time to hear from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. And so what's interesting about that is you have been selling and doing sales for a large part of your life, but yet it was one of these areas that you never had the training.
Correct. It was very ad hoc. And once again, I just watched what other people did, and what if I felt comfortable, I would go ahead and do that, and it worked, right? But then when you really get and step into your own business, wow, that was something totally different. And I learned real quick that I had to get my sales dialed in because I had a disastrous investment that went south fast.
Interesting. And so how did you overcome that?
So what wound up happening is that I was getting by when I first started my business. I would do some local talks. When I first started my business, I got into just a little bit of financial coaching. And the way I would get clients is I would do some talks. I would go to the local chamber of commerce, talk to maybe 20, 25 people, get some free calls in there and offer that up. People would hop on the phone with me and I'd get maybe 3 clients out of it. So I had this bright idea. Well, if I'm humming along that way, I'm going to take the skills that I've known and grow this business. And why don't I just go see if I can 10x that experience? So if I'm in front of 25 people, I can get 3 clients. What if I'm in front of 100 people or 200 people or 500 people? Pretty interesting. So I went ahead and invested in what's called a sponsorship. So what that is you invest money in getting on somebody else's stage. They get the people in the seats. So there I was in front of 500 people giving a talk. Fantastic. It also cost me $15,000 to invest in. But what happened was after that talk, and I did a really good talk, which was great. I walked out with 75 sales conversations afterward. I came home, took me 6 weeks to do those conversations, but I soon learned, Michael, oh my gosh, my sales skill set was in the toilet with my money that went in the toilet with it. And it was so disappointing because what I learned is that the sales skills that had gotten me where I was not going to get me where I wanted to go. And with those 75 sales conversations, I didn't close one sale. Now, there was a lot of problems with my thinking with investing in that sponsorship. There was a couple things that I overlooked, but in the end, I couldn't even close a door after all those sales conversations. And that's really where my journey started, where I got to get this dialed in or else I'm not going to have a business. And that's really where all of this started. So 10,000 hours of studies and sales coaching for myself. And here we are today.
Wow. Amazing. And so what would you say was the biggest mistake that you made with those 75 sales calls?
Yeah. And this is something that really affects accountants and bookkeepers all the time. So it dovetails nicely. I was in front of the wrong audience, right? So knowing who your ideal client is and who is really going to jive with your service, and then also who's right for your service. So it's a matter of really getting that niche dialed in. And I was in front of a crowd of it was a very general crowd. It wasn't a specific crowd. So when I was talking to those people, much like accountants and bookkeepers, they experience as well, a lot of those people weren't even the right people. So even having the sales call and trying to qualify them, I was falling flat within my first 3 questions that I asked them. I couldn't get anywhere with them. And so that was one of the things that really turned it all around as well, is learning who was my ideal client profile and starting to niche my business so I could start getting on the phone with the right people. But then that presented the next problem was, what do I say and how do I say it? So that was the next part that I had to get dialed in.
So ideal client, which is really a good one. I want to dive into that a little bit further as well, but also what do you actually say to these people? I mean, it kind of leads into the next question of the fact that you have a niche. I mean, if you don't know who your client is or your ideal client, even that poses, well, what are you talking about, right? If you're talking to every person under the sun randomly, it would be confusing. I mean, it's the beauty of a niche or a niche, as many of our listeners would say, is that you know you want to have that client, you know a lot about that client, and so you can actually have a very powerful conversation with those types of clients. Tell me how that, when you started to get that, how did that impact your results?
Yeah, I mean, it exponentially impacted my results. Why? Because I was talking to the right people and the people that really appreciated what I was offering. And here's the thing, accountants and bookkeepers come up against us all the time. Why? because they get a lot of referrals. And the challenge is if the person that's giving you the referrals doesn't know who your ideal client is, you're going to get that smattering and a large cross-section of people that might not be right for your business. So getting that dialed in and then letting your referral partners know who your ideal client is, give them a profile, whether it's an industry or maybe it's their annual revenues or number of employees, whatever it is. Just make sure that your referral partners know who good referrals are for you, and then you can start shifting that around. And that's one of the things I had to do as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, just sort of walking through that thought pattern is if you work with, let's say, a dental firm and you're working with dentists and you only work with dentists, I mean, just in terms of the dentist relationship to that as a client of a bookkeeper and accountant, is that they know, and if you communicate to them, I only work with dentists, I'm a specialist in dentistry, and you could have some subspecialties. Like, that's the thing that many people think it's all or nothing, which doesn't necessarily need to be that way. But if you have a group of clients that you work with, you specialize in, the relationship with them would be such that that dentist thinks, I work with a specialist, an expert in my industry. Are they going to tell their colleagues about that? Absolutely, because they know that the likelihood of you doing a good job with another dentist is extremely high. So it's just this magical thing that can happen when you communicate differently. I mean, if the dentist didn't know that you specialized, that would be a missed opportunity. But I think a lot of people forget about that. They don't market themselves even just simply in creating a context or a perspective with their clients about what they are doing, what they're good at, and who they're actually looking for in terms of the market.
Correct, Michael. And, I fell into this trap as well, as I was trying to be everything to everybody. But what I soon noticed is that, here's the thing, there is so much noise out there. Like, think about social media, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Do you know how many accountants and bookkeepers there are on social media right now and on LinkedIn? And if you go in and just do the simple search of a bookkeeper or an accountant, you will get a list of thousands of people. And the problem is they all look the same. So when your ideal client is looking to engage with a new accountant, bookkeeper, or maybe somebody for the first time or bringing somebody on new, how are they going to find you? So here's the challenge, is that if we don't specialize or if we don't hang out our shingle and be more specific about who we serve, our ideal clients can't find us. So we're actually contributing to the noise out there from a social media perspective if we don't niche or become more specialized. Think about it in terms of the medical industry. So if you have a cold, you go to your general practitioner. That is a general doctor or dentist or whatever that practitioner is. But if you have more of a specific problem, just say you have a bone or joint issue or you have a sinus issue, you're going to go see what? A specialist. And so what's really cool is that we can all be specialists too, just like in the doctor-patient relationship, right? You're the specialist and the client is the patient. And you as the specialist automatically have that know, like, trust factor. So that just elevates the trust level of people coming to you, already seeing you as that expert even before they hop on the call. So then it alleviates for practitioners like us to feel like we've got to put on the dog and pony show and talk about what we do for other clients or talk about our certifications or all the things that we can do for them. They already come to the call knowing that. And all we have to do is sit back, relax, and ask them really, really intriguing questions and listen to what they have to say. And in the end, what's so great about this process is that the prospect winds up selling themselves on working with you.
Brilliant. I love that. What are some actions that our listener can take to put themselves in a position to be able to do that?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. One of the things is that if you have a willingness to really up level, and here's what I'm saying, is that everything you do is great as a bookkeeper and accountant, but if you're willing to step into more of that trusted advisor role, and that's really the first step, it's the willingness. Are you willing to be something different and do something different to step into that role? Because if you are looking for that, there are people looking for you. Yes, there are people who need bookkeepers and accountants to do the basics, but there are also people out there who are looking to you to do bigger things. And I know a lot of people who listen to your podcast, Michael, are those people who are looking to contribute on a higher level and be able to make a difference with their clients. Like, think about what we just came out of with regards to COVID. When all of this happened, and you've got these businesses that don't know what to do next, who did they go to rely on? The first person they think of is their accountant or bookkeeper. And if you're offering that trusted advisor service, wow, I consider you one of the people on the front lines. Why? Because you guided your businesses to the other side and really took them through the whole path through COVID and got them out the other side. The huge impact that everybody has made from that perspective is exponential. And so even just that willingness of stepping into that role is really the first step, because once you do that, then you know you've got to do something different. Then you know you've got to shift your conversations. And you also know that you've got to get clear on who that ideal client is that you want to serve at a high level.
I love it. This is some fantastic tips on actually getting this done. Now, in terms of the key skills, let's say they have figured out their ideal client, they have specialized, they can now communicate and differentiate themselves in the marketplace. What would be the next thing that they would want to focus on?
Yeah, so hopping on a call with a prospect, here's one of the things that you can do. And I know people look at sales calls as, I got to get on the phone and I got to sell something today, or I've got to convince somebody of doing business with me. And that's just not the case. When you rise to that level of specialist, once you've identified your ideal client, your prospect comes prepared that they are speaking to a specialist. So you've gotten that trust already dialed in. And what the next step is honestly sitting back and listening to your prospect, asking the right questions in the right order so that you can understand what their needs are. There's no reason to go ahead and talk about things that you can do for them, or we can do this, or we can do that. All you have to do is sit back, ask the right questions, listen to your prospect. And like I said, when you do this, it's really shifting that conversation versus sell, sell, sell. It shifts it to serve, serve, serve. Serve your prospect. Ask the right questions, let them speak, take copious notes. And by the end of the conversation, when you ask the right questions, you put it in the right order, you listen, then the conclusion is that this person has no choice but to work with you. Why? Because they really sold themselves on working with you, because you sat back and listened, gave a little bit of feedback, but didn't oversell the process. And it makes it much more comfortable for your prospect to be able to say yes at the end of your conversation.
So in terms of questions, it's all about asking a question, listen. What are some questions they can ask to open things up?
Yeah. So to open things up when you're on the phone with a prospect, well, first coming to you, they already have a problem, right? So it's a matter of really just fleshing out what that problem is. And one of the mistakes that we make as practitioners is that when we're on a call, there's some things that we like to do, right, that we'd rather be doing than other things. But in order to really solidify that relationship, we've got to get to the heart of the matter with regard to our prospect. We've got to get to what is that number one problem that they're experiencing right now in their business that you can solve. And so that's really the first question. And I love this question. So for your listeners, you may want to write this down. I'll give you a moment to get a piece of paper and a pen, but this one question really brings it all home, because it'll get you out of guessing what this prospect needs. You want to hone in on that number one problem, and here's how you ask that question. You would ask your prospect, you would say, okay, so what is your number one problem right now that if we solve for you would create the biggest impact in your business? I'll say that one more time. What's the number one problem that if we solved for you would create the biggest impact in your business? And then put the phone on mute and let them talk. And what's so amazing about this question, first of all, it's going to differentiate you from the competition because they've never been asked that question before. Number two, you're giving them something to think about that's pretty deep. And they love this question because it gets them thinking on what they really want. And number three, it flushes out. Why would they want to work with you? If you are there to solve the number one problem and they know that you're going to solve it, wow, it becomes a no-brainer to be able to say yes to a partnership with you.
Great question. And would you, in a series of questions, let's say this was a sales call that they were going to get on, where in that conversation, this is a new prospect call, where in that conversation should they ask that question? Should that be right out of the gate, midway through? Is there anything that they need to do to prep the client for that call, that question?
Yeah. So what's really great about that particular question, you can really use it anywhere. But yes, there is an order to answer that question. If a person comes to the call with you and they're really ready and they're right out of the gate, boy, you can shoot that question right out of the beginning. But if you hop on a call first, I always like to take the curiosity route. So when they first hop on a call, it's curiosity questions. And it goes something like this, Michael. It's to say, hey, great to talk with you today. Curious, why did you want to speak with me today? Or why did you take the call with me today? And that can really start opening up the floodgates, because then it gives your prospect the opportunity to talk about themselves versus you talking about yourself. Because what's more important? You want to know and really get into the head of what is going on for your prospect more so than talking about your services. You're going to get more value out of that. And it keeps you from talking about your services, because we don't want to talk about that too early. We want to make it all about the prospect that's on the phone. And we want to draw out as much information as possible. And asking those curiosity questions right out of the gate helps your prospect open up. It gives them permission to talk about whatever they want to talk about and get everything out and everything that's off their chest of why they came to the call.
I love that question. I'm curious, what had you reach out to speak to me today? It's a fantastic question. But I want to point out too, I noticed you changed your tonality when you asked that question. Talk a little bit about tonality.
Yeah, tonality. So what I would say is that if your prospect comes to the call really super excited, you want to go ahead and match their excitement. If they're a little bit more chill and subdued, then you're going to go ahead and be chill and subdued as well, and go ahead and change your tone and shift it based on the energy that you're getting from your prospect. So that's really important as well, to read your audience first. Coming on the call, what's their energy level? Now, you want to match it and maybe dial it up a little bit because you want to be excited to talk with them. But tonality is important. And in that example too, that's why you can ask the curiosity question one of two ways. Meaning maybe they were a referral and they're coming to you because they raised their hand and said, I want to have a call with you. Or if it's somebody that you prospected and did outreach to and say, hey, would you like to have a call with me? That's the why you can ask that question in two different ways.
It's such an interesting, and I would say probably not often practiced by many of our listeners, because they probably haven't had formalized sales training and haven't gone through some of the thinking around this. But just the way you ask a question and generate the question and actually really be curious is such an opportunity, especially for the market that our listener is dealing with. Small business, medium-sized business owners. Typically, these are people who have built these businesses. They are likely very proud of them, and likely have rare opportunity to even talk about what they've built. Because guess what? Nobody cares about anything but themselves. That's what, right?
Yes.
We all care about what we have. But yet, who's going to want to listen to a business owner talk about their business? I mean, come on, let's talk about me already. So when you go in there and you're curious about their business and that you open it up and you get them talking about their business, I mean, you're going to have a new best friend.
Absolutely. And that's the key. And that's also the other part of creating trust and that trust bond. Because if somebody can talk about their business, you have to think about it. Most businesses, it's a really lonely proposition being an entrepreneur or a CEO of a company. And they rely on themselves all the time. So to come to a call and to be able to just talk about things with another business owner, and that's how that's how we really have to think of ourselves as, a colleague or a comrade, as far as we're also business owners too, where we ask that curiosity question, let the floodgates open, let them talk about themselves. They never have an opportunity to do this. So once again, out of the gate, you're standing out from the crowd. You really cut through that noise. People know, and can I start to identify, hey, I felt heard on that call. And it's so funny. You don't have to do anything. If you ask that question, the floodgates open. By the end of them talking, they're like, I feel better already, right? And so we don't really have to do anything at all but show up, ask the questions, let your prospect talk, and they lead themselves to their own conclusion of what they want help with, what their biggest problem is, what you can help with. Then it becomes very, very easy to go ahead and partner with that client by the end of the conversation.
It has me thinking, it's so interesting about our listener, bookkeepers, accountants. And typically, I would imagine that most of our listeners would go in and they would talk too much about what they do as bookkeeping. It's like how it works and what they're going to do and the whole technical aspects of their business. And it's kind of like it's almost like a one-sided gift when you're in a sales call, because you're going to talk and you're going to ask questions and listen and let them say everything about their business, but you don't get permission. That doesn't give you permission to talk about what you do and all of the technical aspects of your business, which you likely our listener loves to talk about. It's very one-sided, and the risk is that by letting somebody else talk about their business, you think you get permission to actually talk about your business. They don't care about what you do.
They don't care. They don't care.
In fact, I bet you would sell more services, higher valued services, if you didn't talk at all about what you do.
1,000%. That's what I tell people, because
bizarre.
as you had said, it is so bizarre. And that's one of the things that I teach in the course is that if you feel like you have to talk, use your mute button or go buy some duct tape.
Yes.
Literally duct tape your mouth or use that mute button. And listen, we've all gone through it. I had to go through that as well, because you do want to answer, you do want to jump in. But the secret to all of this is correct. You're correct, Michael. Don't talk about yourself. Have them talk about themselves. Why? Because they're going to reveal all. And that's what makes this conversation so easy when you know how to navigate it in the right way, ask the right questions in the right order, because then your prospect is talking and revealing everything that they want. They're putting together their own program, and in the end, they're selling themselves. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And yes, they don't care about all the little things that you're going to do for them. All they want to know is that you're going to solve their big problem, and that's good enough for them.
It really has me thinking that sales is just so easy. However, it's really challenging because it looks easy, sounds easy, but there's a lot of pieces that go into this. But once you get it, once you go through something like the course that you offer, once you go through that and you get the system down and you learn the system, it then becomes easy because all you've got to do is follow the system. And, some of the things that we've been sharing today and talking about today, they're fundamental. But you can see, like, how easy is that? Be curious about their business. Don't talk, listen. And instead of telling them about your business, your own business, just ask another question about their business, understand exactly what they want, and then spend 10% of the conversation explaining why what you do is going to solve all of their existing problems that they just told you about. I mean, really, that's easy, isn't it?
You want to know what? It is easy. The challenge is that going back to right when we were in school, I know I was never taught sales in college or university, and many of your listeners weren't either. And we just kind of pieced it together looking at what everybody else does. So unfortunately, we've got some programming in there that we have to undo, right? And put a new program in. And it is that easy. And like I say to a lot of my students, if you can pick up a phone, you can have a sales conversation. You don't have to be a born salesperson. That's a myth. You can be trained. And also you can be trained and untrained at the same time and make it so much easier for yourself, because I see so many people that won't get on a call. Why? Because they just lack the confidence in selling. Like, selling has this awful connotation. People think of used car salesmen. Some people might think of, remember the old door-to-door insurance salesman back in the day. But that's not what it is. It's about having a conversation. It's about serving your prospect, giving them space to talk. And Michael, I couldn't have said it any better than you did.
It really, has me think about this experience I had skiing. I grew up skiing. I was 5 years old when I grew up out west in the mountains, the Cascade Mountains. And so 5 years old, skiing, had a few lessons here and there through high school and, elementary school, that sort of thing, but very, very little. I mean, when you go to school and ski areas, it's one of the events you do once or twice a year. And so I love skiing. I skied a lot as a young person and never got lessons, just did it. You point your skis down the hill and you figure it out. You go down the moguls, you go to more challenging. But what was there always for me with skiing is like, it's a lot of fun, but it's challenging. It's difficult, like the moguls, the this, the that, navigating trees, all of that, like in an extreme skiing. It's difficult, it's challenging. I've always felt like I was okay at it, right? I was out on a trip skiing in the Rockies in my 40 years after doing all of this, right? I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a lesson. I just woke up, I was by myself because my wife was doing a course there. And I thought, well, I was going to do a lesson. And I did a lesson. And literally it was 1 hour. And this pro, obviously the teacher was an excellent teacher and a pro, and 1 hour. And after that 1 hour, when I skied down the hill, it was effortless to do those same moguls. Like 1 hour, it was effortless to do those moguls. It was like, wow, this is a whole different experience. Not only was it still fun, but it was more satisfying and more control and able. And all it was a few little tiny tweaks to how it was my balance and where I was putting my weight and the timing of a turn and where to focus, like just within 1 hour. So now it's been several years since I had that lesson. And every time I ski, it's like it's still there with me. It's still the same satisfying experience because of that 1 hour that I spent investing in my skill changed the game and changed the experience of it. And I really think that's going to be the experience for many of our listeners. It's like, if you've never done sales training, my goodness, and you're in business for yourself, you need to invest a little bit of your time and energy into getting this training. It'll become more effortless, more satisfying, and more results.
Michael, I mean, I love that story, number one. And number two, isn't that amazing how that works?
Right? I'm still amazed by it because I'm like, are you kidding me? I could have had that for an additional 35 years for 1 hour. Now, of course, right, where the training occurs is not always the same, right? I did get training early on, but I was a different thinker. I was young. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. I hadn't skied enough to learn the things, So it's not about just a one and done. It's like, if it's like, this is an important piece, it's like continual training. Let the experts help you master things. And so, should I do any more lessons with skiing? Absolutely, because what's on the other end of that extra training? We don't know.
Exactly. That's fantastic. And you want to know, here's the other thing too, is when you learn how to do this, it actually provides another level of satisfaction. And I love that you hit on that, because sales calls for a lot of people right now, it's just pure dread. They don't want to hop on a call. They get all clenched up and they just don't want to do it. But when you learn how to do this, the right questions, asking them in the right sequence, it actually becomes something of your give in life, meaning that you're actually helping someone when you're coming on that call. You're giving somebody an opportunity to talk about themselves. But then the other thing is you are giving them a gift, and you're giving them a gift of clarity. Because a lot of people, when they come to a call with you, they may think that they have a problem, but by the end of the call, because you're asking questions in the right way and you're being very thought-provoking and still working with them, they discover, wow, actually, this is what my problem was. And you give them the gift of clarity. Whether they work with you or not, you can know that you've served that person today, and that's your give. So if you're looking to give more or participate more or just do things on a higher level, that sales conversation, not only is it, to drive more revenue in your business, but it's also your give out to your community. I mean, it's a beautiful pairing.
What other mistakes do you see bookkeepers and accountants making around sales?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think that a lot of people, what they wind up doing is, I think we covered a couple of things here, right? Number one, talking too much. Number two, focusing on the tactical parts of it versus instead of what they want. And then one of the other things that's always missing that I see is that we force our prospect to do math. Now, let me explain that a little bit. Once you've gone through the conversation, you understand what the problem is. And then here's the next challenge. A lot of times practitioners don't know how to price themselves or put a package around or make the right offer to the prospect. And here's the thing. This is why I say, don't make your prospect do the math. There's one piece that is always missing that I see in these sales conversations. That's really crucial. It's the glue between you and your prospect forming a partnership. And what that is it's 3 letters, and it's ROI, the return on investment. And I think that this is such a crucial, integral part of the conversation. Why? Because if you actually talk about the ROI, it makes your prospect look at your offer and it becomes a no-brainer. The reason why most people object to people's offers, number one, they don't make sense. And number two, you haven't linked the investment to the return on working with you. So let me give you an example. There was someone that I talked to, I did a sales conversation, and what this person's challenge was, once I dug down, is that he wanted to make more revenue. Okay, he needed more revenue. He just wanted to make more money, and I kept drilling down. Then I asked that number one problem that could create the biggest impact. And he wound up slamming his hands on the table. He had this visceral reaction, and he was like, Deb, here's the deal. I need to make more money because I need to hire somebody as a second in command. Here's the thing. I'm stuck in my office all day long, every day. My son, he's 8 years old, and he has baseball games after school, most times during the week. And the kid's really good. And you know what? I'm not getting any younger. I need to get out and see my kids' baseball games, but I got to hire somebody to run the business when I'm not here. So in that scenario, what is it that he wanted? He wanted to find a salary to hire somebody new to take over while he wasn't there. The value of that salary, $80,000. Great. So let's work together so we can get your business on track so we can hire this person to come in so you can see your son's baseball games. If you invest $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to get that $80,000 return, does that make sense? Yes. Yes, all day long. That was his response. And he was like, how do we get started? So that's what I mean by make your prospect do the math. Do it for them. Go there. Talk about the ROI. If they want something that's worth $80,000, $100,000, they want to generate profits of $50,000 this year. And yeah, do you have to look at the P&L beforehand to see if it's feasible? Yes, absolutely. And I'm not telling you to make any guarantees by any stretch of the imagination, but you're going to know if it's doable, especially if you're niched. You know what the predictable expenses are and what the problems are in those businesses. Make sure you're linking the investment with the return, and that's the big piece. That's the big gap that you can fill. Number one, you're going to stand out from your competition. And number two, this is the way you're going to create higher level and bigger ticket partnerships.
Love that. That is such a fantastic opportunity to up-level their game in the selling. I just absolutely love that. One of the things we mentioned is you're a profit-first professional. What was it about profit first that had you belong to that organization?
It was funny. I was having a call with someone that was a referral partner, and somebody had connected us. We were talking about maybe referring some business to each other. And I got on the call with this person, and I was telling her what I was doing at the time. And she's like, have you ever read the book Profit First? I was like, no. She goes, this is a no-brainer for you. You should do this, and you should go be a Profit First professional. We'll never forget that conversation. I picked up the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the game changer. This is the game changer that can really impact business on the level that I was looking for. Now, a lot of what I was doing and offering as a financial coach was along the same lines, but it wasn't a dialed in system with a book. And so I aligned with it so perfectly. But then the other thing is it really allows you to sit in that seat as an expert, right? Especially with a book that's so well known and so many people have heard about it. And just to be able to step into that expertise that really has a high level impact, that was the reason why I was like, sign me up all day long.
Remarkable. And then how has it impacted your business?
Oh, I mean, I've been a Profit First professional probably since pretty close to when they started. So I've been with them probably about 6-7 years now. And I have to tell you, that's all I do now. I actually shifted my business to exclusively just doing Profit First and serving people on that level. Why? Because the level of impact is so exponential. Where else do you have an opportunity to partner with a business and make a huge impact with them by just tweaking a couple of things? Now, those couple of things you only know as the accountant, bookkeeper, or coach or consultant. And you're the ones that can use the system, dial it into the business, and then wind up having those huge results and be able to move the needle that business owner or CEO hasn't been able to move in years. Wow, that is satisfying.
Remarkable. It's really, really excellent to hear. And, I can appreciate when you help somebody identify a whole new context around profit in their business. I mean, you're going to be in their good books, I would imagine. Now, sales training, how did it evolve into you providing sales training for accountants and bookkeepers?
So it's interesting because in Profit First, since I'm a coach consultant, I am not a bookkeeper and I am not an accountant, but I understand finances very well from my time on Wall Street. And I have to partner with a lot of accountants and bookkeepers. And what I found is as I was giving referrals to them, they weren't selling the client or they weren't landing the client. I was like, what's going on? And so what happened is I was starting to sell for them. And eventually they were like tapping me on the shoulder, like, Deb, can you show me how to do this? So I wound up creating a course. I taught it live for a time. And then what I wound up doing is packaging it into an on-demand program, super short micro teachings, and making sure that we get it all dialed in. And that's how it evolved. But yeah, it's because I partner with so many accountants and bookkeepers and I see them leaving money on the table all the time that's rightfully theirs. And instead of me selling for you, you can do it yourself. And it's not that hard and it's really seamless and it's really nice to see the fruits of their labor by working with them and being able to see their results.
That's exciting. Exciting for our listeners. And, if they wanted to learn more or if there was some sort of a way that they could get more information about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, and great news, Michael. Thank you for asking. I actually have something. We've been talking about these questions, the whole podcast here. We've been talking about what's the questions you ask, what's the order you ask them in. I actually have something for everybody on the podcast today. They can hop over to mastermysales.com and we've got the 6 secret questions to ask on every sales call. So that can get everybody started. It's completely free. You can hop over there to Master My Sales and get that and start getting your sales conversations dialed in and start experiencing the magic.
I love it. So that's mastermindsales.com.
Mastermysales.com, correct.
And it's some free resources to get them up leveling their sales. I love it. What a gift. And this has been truly a gift to our listeners. I want to thank you for your generosity on behalf of our listener for coming and sharing your knowledge and giving us some real actionable learnings that we can increase our sales and our business. I heard some great things for myself, and I just absolutely enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for allowing me to serve your listeners today.
Oh, wonderful. And on behalf of them, they are giving you a thank you back. So with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.